much for coming to the show, to the Quilt Show today. We'd like to get to know a little bit more about you and your involvement with the slow movement that you talked about on the show. So you mentioned you were starting a magazine. Can you tell us more about the...
Well, the magazine's on the stands, so it's there now.
Okay.
It came out in January, and it's called the Slow Stitching Movement. I partnered with F&W Media, and so, you know, we worked together to put this together. It's more of a high-end magazine than the other kinds of magazines that are out there. Not necessarily a pattern magazine, but it's very different than Quilter's Home. It's kind of Mark Lipinski grew up. It talks about, you know, even the way we discuss food and getting rid of your stash and how we work and fear and procrastination, all those kinds of things, but the very high-end products, the best products you can afford. Books that may not be on the shelves right now, but books that are important to your kind of mindful approach to not just quilting, but to life. Because the whole stitching movement, or slow stitching movement, to me, when I began it and actually started researching it, was not just making our quilts better and kind of pumping our creative mojo, if you will, but that kind of daily mindfulness and intention in everything we do really changes our lives. It goes way beyond quilting.
How does the magazine tie into the movement?
Well, it's educational because we do talk about what it is. I mean, I think that's important because I think that right now, mindful is the word du jour. And for the last year or so, I mean, even in psychotherapy, it's like mindful psychotherapy. Again, as I said on the show, I didn't invent the slow movement. That was done in the 80s. And there are slow everything. There's slow reading, slow walking, slow church, slow education. It began with the slow food movement. And so we need to educate quilters because there have been people who've been doing slow stitching, mindful, intentional, creative stitching for years. And I guess we're just kind of coming out of the closet. I'm not quite sure if it's an age thing. It's not for everybody, but when you need it, it's there. And so you take what you like from it and you leave the rest. The difference between my slow stitching movement and the slow movements in general was that for me, I needed some concrete kind of instruction. It's one thing to say, okay, be mindful while you quilt. Well, what the hell does that mean? So I really, do certain kinds of meditations, 20 minutes a day, or sometimes 40 minutes a day. I write every day, 3 pages a day, morning pages, based on Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. I take pictures every day, just like Oprah's Gratitude Journal. So I will take pictures of everything that inspires me during the day. I followed some guy in the airport last night to ask if I could take a picture of the back of his shirt. But I'll only keep one. And I put it in a file on my computer. I'll only download one and I'll get the rest of the other ones. That's to encourage being inspired. And what happens is when you do that, you're forced to take a picture every day, or like one good picture or something that inspires you every day. At first, it's pretty easy, and then it gets difficult because I'm like, well, what is this inspiring me? Is that inspiring me? And so you're afraid that you might not have the great pictures, so you start taking pictures of everything. And then very subtly, what happens is you become inspired by everything. Everything you see inspires you. So that's another one of the exercises that I do every day. Also, it's getting rid of all of my stash. That's another thing. I come from the quilting generation. I've been quilting for about 23 years. I come from that generation where you have it for your stash. Is it in your stash? Why don't you? Oh, I'm going to get this for my stash. But we know we're not going to use it. And what happens is, just on the sustainability level, and slow food originally was talked about sustainability for the planet and for our communities and support thereof. I don't want my son, when I get sick and die, to have to go through 2 rooms full of stuff that's going to end up in a landfill when there are people who would really use it. Plus, all this stuff is it's zapping my creativity. It's like almost too much to choose from. And let's be honest, we're encouraged to buy all this stuff, these fabrics, blah, blah, blah. The truth is, nobody ever told us when we were building our stashes that Number one, they would either go out of style, or number two, you wouldn't like them anymore because your tastes change, but you won't get rid of them. So that's another thing, it's getting rid of it, but not throwing it away. It's giving it to people who will use it. And just shopping for what you need when you need it. If you're going to be sewing 20 minutes a day, that's hours a week. You're going to need fabric all the time. I'm not saying don't buy it. I'm just saying don't buy stuff you're not going to use. Look, my studio looked like an episode of Hoarders. I've never owned a cat, but I think that maybe there was a dead, like, flat cat underneath a pile, because every episode of Hoarders has a dead, flat, dehydrated cat. Where do they think the cat went? Well, you know, I was sure I was going to find a flat cat, but I didn't. But it was that bad. And I think many of us out there many quilters can relate to that. So it's about kind of, you know, getting rid of. It's, you know, buying locally. You know, giving your local shops the benefit of the doubt to buy and order fabric from them rather than doing it online, because otherwise we're not going to have these shops. They're closing constantly. We need to support our local economies as well, and that's all part of the slow stitching movement.